Have you been wondering why trauma is still haunting you? Maybe you've been doing a lot of research trying to figure this out. Somehow you know that trauma is connected to the anxiety and depression that you're struggling with, and definitely connected if you're dealing with bipolar disorder, but you don't know how to resolve the trauma. And so again, maybe you've done a lot of research and it's left you wanting. So I want to cover today why the trauma is still haunting you, and better yet, how to actually resolve the trauma, but do it the right way without a lot of frustration or wasted effort and wasted time. First, I want to share the aha moment that I had that helped me to see how important this principle that I'm about to share with you is. So I work with a lot of people and I help them overcome anxiety and depression. I walk with them through the process of how to heal emotionally, physically, and spiritually so they can live their champion life. And in that process, I had one particular person, his name was Matt, and he kept coming to us week after week, and he kept going, I just can't get over it. I just can't get past this. Week after week, he would say, it was another rough week. I can't get past the pain. I just can't let go of how bad it hurt. And week after week, he would say that, which is really odd because normally when I work with coaching clients, within 30 days, everything turns around, everything changes. Very quickly, they get past the pain. Very quickly, they get past the hurt. And so I was like, what's going on? Why are we hearing this from him? And so I started to ask him questions because that's what you do as a coach. You ask questions, you get to the bottom of it. And so in my question and discovering what was going on, I discovered that he was spending 3 hours a week staring at the trauma, talking about the trauma, looking to resolve the trauma. And it was slowing him down. It was causing him to stall out. He wasn't seeing the success our other coaching clients see success. And so I knew something was up. And so I asked him to make a bold move. I'm saying, Matt, I really care about you. I really care about your success. I want you to be able to live the life of full, abundant joy like you dream of and actually experience unshakable peace. And so I'm going to ask you to do something bold. And so I asked him to pause his counseling. I knew asking him to stop his counseling was going to be way out of the box for him. And so I just said, just pause your counseling for a bit. And so he did just that. Within 2 weeks of him pausing his counseling, he took off like a rocket. He began to experience fresh hope like never before. And rather suddenly, he started enjoying the now and dreaming about the future. It changed everything for Matt. Unfortunately, most people think that the way to resolve trauma is to sit and stare at it and talk about it, but it doesn't actually make it better. And if you try this approach, you know the trauma is still haunting you. So it was this encounter with Matt that helped me to go, aha, we are definitely on to something. So I'm going to share with you the principle that allowed Matt to experience a breakthrough. And I'm also going to share with you the 3 power questions that you need to ask that have the power to change everything for you. This is called the IceBerg Principle. And here is a picture of an iceberg. Have you ever said, oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg? Why do we say that? We mean that the part that we can see is up above, but there's a whole lot going on under the surface. Just like in this picture, we can't see what's under the surface. All we can see is the iceberg, the top part. But what's going on underneath is incredibly important. Hello there. I'm Stacey Rivera. I'm all about empowering champions just like you create more joy in their life. If you're looking for hope and a proven strategy to go from being overwhelmed by your life and your emotions to living a champion life and fulfilling your God-appointed purpose, then you are in the right place. I am definitely not an amazing illustrator, but I'm going to do my best to illustrate this principle so you really understand it. So here is my drawing of an iceberg. You're going to have to take my word for it. That is an iceberg. And here is the waterline. Underneath this waterline, there's a whole lot going on. So most people, when they're dealing with anxiety and depression, they simply focus on the symptoms. And all the symptoms that you're facing are above the waterline. The symptoms are the racing thoughts, the endless worry, the insomnia, the inability to sleep well, the inability to just rest and know that everything's okay, the feeling that impending doom is coming, the sadness that keeps on coming, the emotional instability. All of these are symptoms. And right now, you probably spend a whole lot of time managing the symptoms. And what you need to understand, the symptoms are just the part above the waterline. What the key to unlocking this is looking at what's going on underneath. What is actually causing those symptoms? And the things that's underneath the waterlines, the things that you can't see, are your beliefs. Your beliefs are actually causing some of the symptoms that you face. And brain chemistry is causing some of these symptoms. And shame is causing some of these symptoms. There's a number of things that are happening underneath that waterline that are contributing to the symptoms that you're spending so much time wrestling with. So what we need to do instead is to look at what's happening underneath the waterline. And if we address what's happening underneath this iceberg, it will change the symptoms. So one of the things that of course is concern is, what about trauma? Trauma is causing these symptoms. So it actually looks like this. Here is a kind of wonky drawing of a torpedo. I'm going to have to ask you to take my word for it. This is a torpedo. Oh my gosh, it looks like a fish with a fin. Oh, that's funny. Let me try this again. Actually, let me just erase that end part here. Let me draw the end part a little bit better. Ah, that was a little better. Okay, there we go. So this is a submarine. Now the submarine is not the trauma. The submarine actually represents the person that caused the trauma. And from the submarine, there was a torpedo. And this torpedo is the torpedo of trauma. And this torpedo of trauma left the submarine years ago. So this was the person, again, the submarine represents the person that caused that trauma. And this torpedo represents the trauma itself. This is the torpedo of trauma. And it hits underneath the surface. And this torpedo of trauma causes an alteration to your beliefs. And it causes an alteration to your brain chemistry. And it causes shame. And all of these things contribute to your symptoms. And so all this time you've been looking for this torpedo of trauma that already left the submarine years ago. It's already done. There's nothing you can do about that. But you can change the result of that trauma. So if you will focus instead on what has now happened to your brain chemistry as a result of trauma and what has happened to your beliefs and deal with that shame, then everything will change. And the symptoms that you're experiencing, those symptoms above the water, again, that worry, those constant thoughts, the intrusive thoughts, the compulsive actions, all of that will change if you deal with what's underneath the surface. So what you just saw there was the IceBerg Principle. And again, we've got to deal with what's happening underneath. And so many people, they're looking for that trauma that's already happened years ago. And what they really need to look at is how the trauma has changed things for them. Rather than staring at the trauma, we want to fix the damage that the trauma has caused. So one of those components, of course, is the brain chemistry. We want to work on physically what needs to change so the brain chemistry heals. That's definitely part of it. But what I really want to talk about is what beliefs have come out of that trauma. So many people deal with this by trying to just deal with their emotions around it, and you've done enough of that good work. And so now what we want to look at, how have your beliefs changed? The key to resolving trauma is to address what you believe about yourself, the world, and God as a result of the trauma. How did the trauma change what I believe about myself? So most people, when they get started in life, they feel like a champion. Actually, we're born as champions. But then life happens. And if you've experienced a traumatic event, then your belief about yourself may have changed from being a champion to being a victim. If you think that things always happen to you or bad things happen, or you just can't get over it, these are all beliefs. These are things that have happened as a result of that trauma. And guess what? You can change what you believe about yourself. The second power question, how did the trauma change the way I see the world? Again, when we come into this life, we think of the world as being good, as being gracious, as being abundant. But after a traumatic experience, you might think the world just sucks. I don't know why. I always feel like the word sucks is not appropriate for a video. I might need some comment help. Is it okay? Can I say that without getting into too much trouble? After a traumatic experience, you might find that you're starting to see the world negatively. The world is just hard. The world is negative. And so this will change things. The way you view the world will affect your heart and your mood. This will cause some of the sadness, that will cause some of the anxiety and some of the worry that you're experiencing. And then the third power question, how did the trauma change the way I see God? For a lot of Christians, they fall into depression out of a traumatic experience. They start to mistrust God because of what happened. God, where were you? Why didn't you show up for me? Why didn't you protect me from that traumatic event? And so again, traumatic experience can change the way that you see God. In all three of these questions, after some reflection, you can focus on how to change that, how to bring your beliefs into alignment with the Word of God. When you stand in truth, you are able to experience abundant joy. And from that abundant joy, you start to experience peace more readily. On a regular basis, it becomes unshakable no matter the circumstances that you're facing. I mentioned earlier about the brain chemistry, and I want to make sure I highlight that because, again, if you've watched any of my videos, you understand that we have to heal emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So how to resolve trauma, we can't just focus on our beliefs around the trauma, we also have to look at the brain chemistry. And so you need all three of these. If you'd like to understand more fully why you're experiencing partial results from what you've tried, you might want to check out this video here, where I talk about partial treatment leads to partial results. Or if you're dealing with bipolar disorder, like I once was, then you want to check out this video right here. In this video, I talk about what psychiatrists aren't telling you, and what they are not telling you is causing you to stay trapped with bipolar disorder.